Welcome to the $1 million point. We have beaches, we have tanks, we have fish, we have everything you want except for healthy stuff.
Healthy stuff. We're the McKays, and this is Firefly. Join us as we journey to 100 islands. Did Daddy make breakfast?
Literally not even on.
The eggs had gotten moldy, not rotten, and so now we're getting rid of them in style. We sailed to Espiritu Santo, which is always nicknamed by everyone as just Santo. Santo is Vanuatu's largest island and is home to Vanuatu's second largest city, Luganville. After spending so long in remote villages with very little cement buildings and vehicles, it was almost culture shock to be back in air-conditioned shops lined with paved roads.
Here's your regulator. Here's your BCD.
Here we are at Santo, and so I can fulfill a bucket list of diving the Coolidge, which is an amazing shipwreck, one of the best shipwrecks in the entire world to dive. But there are two things standing in my way. One thing is that I am sunburned, so my mask is gonna hurt like all dickens. And my husband has a cold. If you know anything about diving, you cannot dive when you have a cold because you can't you can't equalize. So I have to go alone. One thing you need to know about me and the sun is that when I was a teenager, my mom was diagnosed with skin cancer and given 5 years to live. And thankfully, they were wrong about that diagnosis in that now she is 82 years old and she still has skin cancer, but she is still fine. However, I am terrified of the sun. And yes, I am terrified of being out in the middle of the ocean. I am terrified of, man overboard. I'm terrified of box jellyfish and lots of things. But I think one of the top of my list is everybody getting skin cancer from being on the boat in the sun all the time. And so this really frustrates me. I was in the shade. I thought that I was fine and that I would not get sunburned, but it just proves how deadly that stinking sun is. I guess that's a little overkill, huh? Maybe I don't need that much. I'm not getting burnt today.
It has the size of a fire hose.
Okay guys, so here we are. We're at the Espiritu Santo, and there was like a scuba dive tour that was gonna happen.
And so Lindy is gonna dive.
Yeah, Lindy had to dive. It's like you use a scuba bottle and it's connected to like a hose with a thing that you put in your mouth and you breathe from it, and then you go underwater kind of like a fish. Have you ever seen a fish? Fish are kind of crazy. There's fish all around here.
Wait, what are you guys doing? What are you guys doing?
We're going to buy pizza.
My family's going to $1 Million Point to go snorkeling, and I'm the only one to do the Coolidge. This is kind of crazy.
We're going to $1 Million Point.
I haven't been diving for 3 years because of the pandemic, which made me and the diving company nervous because the depth of the Coolidge varies from 20 to 60 meters deep. I am so shiny. So new development, I'm not experienced enough. I haven't been diving enough lately, so I can't dive the Coolidge. So we're going to dive $1 Million Point. I was pretty sad about not being able to dive the Coolidge, even though I knew they were right. I am not an experienced diver. I know they made this that you can do it alone, but having troubles. I have no excuse for not having more diving experience. We actually have a diving air compressor on the boat, and Dustin and especially Josh have been diving all over the islands of Vanuatu. Vanuatu has some of the best, if not the best, scuba diving in the world. One of the main reasons for this is because of the lack of fertilizer and other chemicals that can trickle down into the coastline. The small population and remoteness of Vanuatu also adds to the untouched beauty that is easily accessed when sailing through these waters. The bright corals that are alive and colorful are so plentiful you don't even need to leave your dinghy to experience these wonders. This is how you go snorkeling from your dinghy. Even though I couldn't go to the Coolidge shipwreck now, it's nice to have an excuse to go back to Santo someday. And in the meantime, it was fun to go to the same place that my family was going to, $1 Million Point. $1 Million Point has to be the most unique beach in the world. It's basically a World War II museum strewn across the beach and in the shallow waters. My boys went snorkeling there, and despite not diving deep, there is much to see. It may seem crazy to see rusted coral-encrusted car parts littering this tropical paradise, but that's exactly what you'll find here. And not just car parts, but tanks, guns, cannons, and ships. My boys found an afternoon of snorkeling to be a spectacular game of treasure hunting. And as amazing as the snorkeling is here,
I'm standing on a tank!
let's see what there is to find when diving in a bit deeper. Let me take you with me as I scuba dive $1 Million Point.
We just finished, so now you gotta go.
It's really good that I am not going to the Coolidge because I am remembering how little I know, and so I can't go that deep. This place has a fascinating history. From what I've learned, this is what happened. The United States used the island of Santo as one of their major bases during World War II. During the years of the war, tanks, guns, ammo, and other war paraphernalia were stored at Santo until needed. But all of a sudden the war ended and war equipment suddenly was no longer necessary. Japan had surrendered, and now thousands of men who had been separated from their families and country desperately wanted to get home. They all wanted to board the ships headed for the US, but thousands of soldiers took up space, so much space that there wasn't any room for war supplies. In the chaos of change, the US military approached local Frenchmen and Nevans who had called Santo home long before the war. These soldiers tried to sell tanks, jeeps, and anything they had to the Santo locals. But the Santo residents just smiled knowingly. They knew that the US military was desperate. There was no way the US ships had room for war equipment, whether the US military got money for it or not. If they refused to buy the US vehicles and supplies, all the locals would have to do was wait until the ships full of soldiers left their shores, and then they could take all the war spoils for free. The US military leaders grudgingly acknowledged the reality of their situation, but stubborn bitterness won the day. If no one would buy their war supplies, no one would obtain the spoils, even if that meant throwing everything into the seas. The United States military spent the next couple of days throwing all military supplies of any kind into the ocean. They would send tanks, trucks, and jeeps at full speed off of the pier. They sank small ships, they dumped guns, ammo, and anything else of value into the salty, corrosive waters. And then with smugness, they left for America. As soon as the last boat disappeared over the horizon, the French and Nevans smiled at each other. Immediately, they started towing out all they could from the ocean. They saved a few Jeeps here and a few trucks there. They took them apart, cleaned them out, and then they were as good as new. However, the pure volume of supplies that the US military threw overboard was massive. The French and Nevans sighed, knowing that millions of dollars had been lost. Thus the name $1 Million Point.
So they all chucked them in the ocean, and now there's all these tanks and AK-47s all over in the ocean. It's crazy. Okay, let's go.
That was so good that I did not go to the Coolidge because I really had forgotten everything and I didn't know what I was doing. And I think $1 Million Point was just as amazing or even more amazing. Wow, I'm so glad I went to $1 Million Point. Sadly, our stay in Santo was brief, but we will never forget this amazing island. Subscribe to join us next week as we go to the island of Tana, where we climbed an active volcano that exploded while we were there. Was that scary?